Yo, what is going on, everybody? It is Brave Cat here once again with another geophysical update covering earthquakes, volcanism, and space weather. But not just that, we're covering this as it relates to certain things, such as the magnetic field and the geophysical poles shifting. And here we are on the NOAA.gov website, where it's being tracked. And well, now see, I didn't realize it actually had a three-dimensional view, which is much better. So yeah, I mean, once it gets past 2025 here, it's like projected outcome. But you know, as we can see from what has been literally happening, and so what this is, I mean, they talk about like, oh, pole shift takes thousands, tens of thousands of years. Well, certain pole shift events do. There are those longer epoch geophysical events, but then there's this, the rapid geomagnetic excursion that, given the fact that we have all these measuring instruments and satellites and technology that can actually physically record these things, it's completely undeniable what is basically what's happening. Now, the full outcome, every little detail, that obviously cannot be predicted, but, we don't really need that when we can see how quickly things have been escalating here. So I've got too many things running, so this is a little bit laggy, but that's what we're doing here. So let's start things off by taking a look at the earthquakes here, and I'm just going to preface this update by saying there's been good news and there's been bad news. I would say the good news is, well, very good news. The massive, colossal sunspots that were directly facing Earth, like a double-barrel shotgun, have gone away. I mean, they'll probably be back. It's not like they disappeared forever. They just went to the far side of the sun here. Let me just quickly go here. Actually, I might as well go here first, since this is actually more relevant to everything, but we'll go through the earthquakes. So yeah, there's not much to report here. It's kind of hard to see. And again, like, most of the sunspots are going to be very small, comparatively. I mean, these are still, close to Earth-sized, every single one. But it's nothing like what we saw. I believe if we go to this very first frame here, this is like 3 days ago, you can just barely see on the right side those massive sunspots leaving. So if those pop off now, well, it could still be a problem, but it's not nearly as bad as if they're facing right at us. So then we go here, and this, I think, should be current, this frame. So we got a couple of little sunspot groups coming in, but again, I'm just here for extra awareness and, just doing my part. So, there's other people you can follow if you want to learn the full breakdown of all these things. I'm just an amateur in the midst. So anyways, though, on this chronograph here, we got you can see the moon flying by. But other than that, it's easier if I just kind of scroll through it here. Haven't had any major eruptions, and that's, again, the major good news, is that even though, again, we got lucky. Like, it's not just like, oh, it didn't happen this time. It's like, we got lucky. Okay, again. So, count your blessings. Count your blessings. Now, in the meantime, okay, we haven't had any major flaring directly at us, but it's like we constantly have a pretty wicked coronal hole facing us. So this one is It almost looks like a giant scar on the sun. So that's interesting. That's definitely contributing to some of the instabilities and the electron flux. So, okay, on the left here, this is the KP index. This records geomagnetic storms, and it's all green. So again, that's good. Haven't had anything above a 5 in the past week, so that's pretty good. And this X-ray flux, this shows the actual solar flaring. So if we go over here, we got C class, M class, and then X class flares. And we haven't even had an M class flare recently, so that's also good news. You know, we've got this complex view of the geomagnetic field itself, the Earth's shield. Now, I don't know nearly enough about this to really make a comment on it, because, you know, it looks like it's all over the place. If we just kind of scroll through here, this is last 24 hours. Okay, well, it's supposed to be 45-minute steps, because then it actually loads. You know, it looks crazy. Like, I don't really know for sure what's going on here, but again, if I had to guess, I would say that's not particularly normal. It looks, again, like the magnetic field is just constantly struggling at this point. And then this big screen here, this basically is showing, imagine, you know, this being the surface of the sun with the different polarities of the sunspot groups and the magnetism going on. And then these dots that are floating around is the positioning of the planets and different satellites in relation to the surface. So this little light blue circle here is Earth, and what's behind it is basically up here what is directly facing us. So when you see, you know, these spots over here on the far right, where it's like this, you know, heavy blue and orange blob, those are the sunspots. The bigger ones, the ones that are more, you know, geomagnetically active or whatever. So whatever is placed in front of that is going to be at a higher risk, as far as I understand it. And then lastly here we've got the electron flux. So this has been slowly going up a little bit, and I think that mostly has to do with the coronal hole and some of the minor flaring. But if we take a look at the last 30 days, we can see that there's kind of a pattern here. So it goes up, goes down, goes up again. So it's nothing too crazy. You know, if we were in the midst of a heavy geomagnetic storm, you know, the electron and proton flux would be at dangerous critical levels. But luckily that's not the case. Again, we've been pretty lucky. So with that out of the way, and again with the geomagnetism here, let's take a look at the earthquakes. Again, this overlay here is provided by Dutchsinse. I've been a fan of his for a while, and it sucks to see that he just, he can't do what he wants. I don't know. I'm just here. All right, so let's take a look. So, okay, some other little piece of bad news here. The the real-time tremor map, they went in and they updated it. It looks all fancy and clean, but it's actually just kind of less usable, less user-friendly, in my opinion. I liked how it was before. Now it just, it looks like it's been cleansed, that kind of sterile kind of look. And if you go to event time, color by event time, look, it just makes it harder to see. Like, before when we had the whole spectrum of colors and you could see the timeline, and it was so much easier to see how, these tremors are progressing and shifting. Well now, oh, conveniently enough, they made it harder to make those correlations. I'm not even remotely surprised. So we're just going to keep it on this view because it's at least easy enough to see. And this is looking at the last week. I mean, this might be a better setup. There's seems to be more filters and more settings, maybe. But I don't really care. I still like how it was before. So again, this is really common trend now as we see the clusters of tremors in California and up in Washington and Vancouver. And then the distinct lack of tremors here in Oregon followed up with activity off the coast. So again, we've got a silent zone, we've got a quiet zone here in Oregon, and off the coast is where we keep seeing earthquakes hit. So it's right in between where the pressure's moving. And speaking of pressure moving, again, we're going to have to really look at California here. So, and I haven't actually really looked at this ahead of time, so I'm really just looking at it right now, but that's fine. So I'm going to look at the other feed, but it looks like right off the bat, we have potentially a decrease in tremor activity north of San Francisco Bay, which is where we've been seeing them. Let's just knock out these tremors first. So I'm going to go to the 0.0 and greater feed. Okay, so we still have a tremor, so that's why I needed to take a look at this feed, because this is the actual tremor feed. So okay, we still have that, but we see this other stack of tremors here on the Bay Area itself. So, you know, that wasn't really there before. Not sure when that started. But if we go past the 7 days here, well, it becomes completely unmanageable. And then, of course, conveniently enough, this tremor map only covers things pretty much from North California to Vancouver. Like, that's this whole map here. Even though there is a ton of tremors going on in the rest of California, you know, conveniently it's going to leave that out. Why, you might ask? Well, I can only guess is to make it harder for normal people to look at the data themselves and make informed guesses. You know, just my guess. I couldn't tell you. Well, also other than the fact that if you look up most of these tremors that happen in the rest of California, especially in this area, you'll find that at every single one of these locations there's something of interest. Whether it be a pumping operation, some sort of solar farm, geothermal, some sort of energy production, or some other interesting locale. Again, meaning that earthquakes aren't just random. They take the path of least resistance, and there's many factors that come into play. Anything from very low frequencies generated by energy production, all the way to solar flares, volcanoes, and of course, this is the obvious one, the tectonic plates themselves being the biggest weak spots in the crust. So when you see this stuff happening, you can literally, you know, go in through Google Maps or whatever and see the additional geography or other points of interest. So anyways, to round up that, I think the West Coast, again, is seeing a lot of movement. But nothing, you know, too crazy. Again, if we stay lucky with the solar flares, then that'll help decrease the odds of something major happening there. And again, the other good news is that we have not had a megaquake happen in Japan, even though there's been some very strange signs here. So let's take a look at the past 7 days. And again, there is a tremendous amount of activity going on here. So it's not like we're out of the woods yet. In fact, I think it is still a inevitability that something major earthquake related is going to happen up here, possibly soon. Okay, let's see. Drake Passage, not much going on there yet, which this area is the antipode region to Kamchatka, Japan. So again, we also want to look down here. So like for example, these earthquakes are mostly going to be the residual energy coming down from the Pacific and from South America. But the earthquakes here, we want to keep a watch on, especially if they're somewhat deep, because again, in the past 6 months or so, we've been seeing, when we see crazy stuff going on up here, we also see crazy stuff going on down here, and vice versa. We had the multiple 7s striking the Drake Passage, and along with all the activity up here. So again, it's not random. These things are correlated. And Japan has luckily avoided the worst of anticipations so far. But again, it's a good idea to keep watch, considering there's still a lot of 5s and even some 6s happening here. Let's see, what is the biggest magnitude that has struck in the past week? It's actually been seemingly less than 6.0 activity, so that's good. Things have actually taken a step down. And with that, we can also look at the deep earthquakes, because that'll also give us a hint. So, yep, it looks like, of course, we always have deep earthquake activity going on here. It's all staying in the 4.0 range. So again, that's good. I think things have taken a step down, considering in the past several weeks we've been seeing an uptick of 5.0 deep earthquakes here. What's the biggest thing that has struck? Alright, so we've had a shallow 5.7 hit. That's the biggest earthquake in the past week. So again, that's fantastic news. It looks like we have taken a complete step down from the global, nearly global 6.0 activity we were seeing, along with, consistent 5.0 deep earthquakes. So that's good. Like, this is good. Now, of course, we still have, let's see, we've got a deep earthquake here, west of Japan, kind of on the coast here. That could lead to some larger, shallower activity, which may have already struck. In fact, if we take another look here, these 5.3, 5.2, I don't know if this is supposed to be the same event. I think these are 2 separate events. I guess we can look them up. So they happen at different times. Yeah, it looks like these are 2 separate events. So that's what we got going on there. Now let's quickly take a look at the rest of it here. So let's see, South America, yep, we've had, these equidistant 5s here by these volcanoes as pressure goes along the plate. If you even turn these rings off, you can really see the pinpoint accuracy of some of these standing wave oriented equidistant earthquakes. And over here, let's see, what is this? Costa Rica? Puerto Rico, sorry. Yeah, we've been seeing a lot of activity like this for a while now, so I think that's just kind of par for the course. But these are all 3s or lower, 3.6 being the highest, it looks like, 3.9. So, let's see, is there any, I'm not even sure if there's any felt reports here. 0 felt reports, so nothing crazy there. Let's take a look at Europe. This is always the finicky one. This is always the one where we kind of have to guesstimate, because there's no specific time frames here. It just says, you know, last 100 and all that. But again, this is where we see the major hotspot here is Western Turkey, going into Greece and all these other European countries here. You know, we've had some tremors uptick right around here in Italy, where there's Campi Flegrei, the volcano. Want to keep an eye on that as well, but I don't think it's doing anything too spicy right now. So we see a lot of the same things here. This tremor swarm always ongoing here in Western Turkey. There's a lot of mining operations, blast mining, quarries. Who knows what's really going on over here. You know, these earthquakes might actually be caused by something else. And, you know, we see a lot of pressure transferring around here. We haven't had anything too crazy, so that's good. Again, this kind of follows the whole trend we've been seeing with having a downshift of earthquakes. Because we were seeing some 4s peppered in Europe, and now it has gone back down to 3s with some of that pressure going up north into the Arctic Circle. So things are looking more normal than they have in a while, which is fantastic. Now, when you look at things geopolitically, well, things are never normal in the clown world, so, you know, but, you know, I think that really covers most of it. We have avoided what could have been some pretty bad stuff when it comes to space weather and earthquakes. There has been some volcanism going on. Could really quickly pull that up. So to end things off, I'm going to cover the earthquakes in Italy as well as the general volcanism. Again, still using Volcano Discovery because I just don't trust any of these government websites anymore. Now that being said, yeah, I did show this. But this is not just recorded and tracked and backed by the government. This is just basically them finally admitting that something is awry. Now, again, how many people are going to be visiting this website? Almost nobody even knows about it, so that's why I'm sure they don't really care that they have this website operational, is because the vast majority of people aren't even going to look here. You know, so it's kind of like, you know, when you go look at declassified documents, they'll put things in there that they know the vast majority of people aren't even going to touch. So, you know, they admit things slowly but surely. This is kind of the age of disclosure, so to speak. But anyways, let's get this wrapped up here. So like I said, there's some tremor activity here down in Italy where Campi Flegrei is, right here. But nothing crazy. I mean, these are very small tremors. More activity going on kind of northwest and then going up into this mountain range. As expected, I mean, this would be the areas that we would expect to release pressure along these fault zones, the mountain ranges, the volcanoes. So nothing too out of the ordinary. And we go to the volcanism, which, unlike everything else, this is not ordinary. We still have a lot of different volcanoes going off. This is just from today, I believe. Yeah. So we got Kamchatka coming in with another wave of activity here. Let's see if we can kind of skim through these here. Alert level lowered to white. Okay. Yeah, there's been, you know, blasts going on here. Ash plumes. But it looks like today, maybe things have taken a step down, even though we still see some sort of activity. Okay, so Philippines, this is another kind of watch zone. You know, you don't want to see too much stuff going on here near Philippines. Indonesia, Sumatra. So yeah, lots of stuff in the far west Pacific here. When we take a look here, we're looking at this whole stretch here. So, I mean, we can take a look at the Smithsonian, but to get at least a visual representation, again, you know, this is the whole Ring of Fire. This is where we're likely to see most of the activity volcanically. But again, we've been seeing an increase in volcanoes that were once dormant or even ancient, suddenly coming back to life. Here's Kamchatka. Here's Philippines, going down into the Indo-Australian plate. That's also congruent with where these volcanoes are going on. Most of them. A little bit Alaska. Of course, Hawaii is always doing something. And the list just keeps going. It just keeps going. This is probably the longest list I've seen. You know, even though I'm not looking at this every single day, but that's a long list. And that doesn't even cover all of the currently active volcanoes. That's just what's been reported for today. So, but yeah, I think that'll about do it for this update. Hope y'all enjoyed. Hope y'all got something out of it. Eyes open, no fear. Be prepared, not scared. And as always, hope y'all having a good one. I'll catch you all in the next.